Hey, are you here? Yeah, I'm kidding. I know you could be anywhere, but you are tuned in to the Paul Leslie Hour, so we know that, and we thank you. Oh, we are excited about today's show. This is Paul's second interview with a legendary songwriter, Mr. Bob McDill. Now, this interview went down at Bob's house. Bob McDill wrote some iconic songs. Amanda, Don't Close Your Eyes, Louisiana Saturday Night, Gone Country, Good Ole Boys Like Me, It Must Be Love, Song of the South, and so many others. And did you hear the news? Bob McDill is joining the Country Music Hall of Fame. Along with Tanya Tucker and Patty Loveless, McDill is in the Hall of Fame class of 2023. Hey, and one of the first to report on McDill's induction was SavingCountryMusic.com. We'd like to say hello to our friends at Saving Country Music, which covers great country singers and songwriters like Bob McDill. So before we get into it, let's remind you to please subscribe to the Paul Leslie Hour on YouTube. It's free, it's fun, and it's easy. And you won't miss exclusive content just like this. So, let's begin.
You got a good voice and pronunciation for radio or whatever you mixed works real well. Sounds good.
Thank you very much. Well, it's a great pleasure, an honor to be in the home of Mr. Bob McDill.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Glad to have you.
It's an honor. So this is our second interview. The first interview was done by telephone, but it's an honor to be here in your home.
Mm-hmm.
And for all the folks out there, there's some news. You are now an inductee of the Country Music Hall of Fame, the highest honor in country music.
So they tell me, yes. So
congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
So how did you find out? How did that news come to you?
Well, my friend Don Schlitz, who's another one of those writers like myself who is in the Country Music Hall of Fame, but a person you've never heard of, called me for lunch and said, I need your advice. And I thought, well, Schlitz doesn't need my advice. So we sat there for a few minutes, and then here came all the people. Surprise! Who sat down with us and said, you're now a member, due to be inducted in October, I think.
In October. What was going through your head when they told you?
Well, nothing. That happens a lot lately.
Just taking it as it comes.
Yes, right. Don and I were talking about old times, and then when they sat down, I thought, who are these people and what do they want? And then they sprang that on me.
I'm hoping you can take us back. Give us just kind of like a snapshot. What was life like growing up in Texas?
Well, I grew up in a little hamlet, Walden or Terrell Park. It was kind of way back then. That's been a long time ago. It was a little Gulf Coast hamlet south of Beaumont. It was truck farms and egg farms. I don't know what it is now. But my dad was a realtor. He worked in town. Mom was a bookkeeper at American National Bank. They both commuted. And it was a pretty nice place to grow up. Pretty nice.
What kind of things were you interested in?
Fishing and hunting fishing and hunting. Mother would take us to the end of town every Saturday to the Terrell Public Library in Beaumont and make us check out a book and then make us read it.
Yeah.
And so that was a good beginning for that made us bookish, I guess, my brother and I.
Right. Well, anybody who has been in your house, you're going to look around and you will definitely be certain this is an outdoorsman.
I suppose. Not as much as I used to.
No. Has nature, being out there in the woods or being out there by the water, has that been a source of inspiration for you?
Yes, I think so. I think so. We To me, when I was a child, you know, the Hudson River painters, those painters that up in New York, and northern New York, who painted those fabulous landscapes of the wilderness. That's what the whole world looked like to me as a child. That awe-inspiring. At least the outdoors did.
Can you tell us about the first time you attempted on your own to write a song?
I don't know about the first time, but I began to tinker with that at about 15 or 16. And then I'd come barging into the den where my parents were watching television and make them listen to something. My dad would say, "Oh, not right in the middle of Gunsmoke." And Mother would make him turn down the TV, and they'd have to listen to some little ditty that I'd written, and then I'd trail back off to my bedroom.
Can you remember when the stuff that you were, writing and putting together, when people started to look at it or listen to it, I should say, and say, "Wow, Robert here he's writing some good stuff"?
Probably when I was in college. We had a little folk group, little folk trio, and we played in a little joint there in the downtown where all the college kids went on weekends. And behind that hotel there where the tap room was, with Bill Hall and Cowboy Jack Clement had just coincidentally built a studio, Gulf Coast recording studio. They had imported Alan Reynolds and Dickie Lee down there to write songs, and so Alan and Dickie would come in and sing, take up the mic, sing a little guest shot, and Jack Clement would. So that's where we met, and Alan began to hear some of my little songs that we were doing and showed some interest.
Can you remember what was going through your head when you first decided you were going to set out to Tennessee to give this a shot?
What was going through my head? I was in the Navy at the time, Naval Reserve, 2 years active duty, and I was corresponding with Alan. They had gotten me a couple of little recordings, Sam the Sham and Perry Como, and I was sending songs to Memphis. They were in Memphis at the time, and then Alan wrote me and said, "We'd like for you to come up and join us in Memphis when you get out of the Navy." And so they didn't have to ask me twice.
You were excited to go.
You bet, yes.
Why? What was it? What were you thinking about that? Just a new adventure?
It was really all I wanted. It was all I wanted was to be in music one way or another.
Right.
Thought about being an engineer. I thought about being a producer. Thought about being a singer. Thought about all those things, and finally settled on the one thing I was good at, which was writing songs, and gave up all the other pursuits.
Yeah. Yeah, and there was never, I've listened to and I love that record that you made, Short Stories.
Thank you.
But there was never more of an impulse. I know there had to have been other people who had encouraged you to record again.
I've had some little feelers from RCA, for example, but I don't think they were that serious, and I didn't really want it anyway. I made a single for Polygram at one time, which was a big label at the time. And I remember when I finally got the records in the mail, they'd printed the labels backwards. The A side was printed on the B side, and the B side was printed on the A side. And I thought, maybe this is an omen. Maybe it's not going to go well in that area at all. So
you just said, you know what, songwriting, that's what I'm going to pursue.
And about that time, Alan Reynolds and I wrote a folk song called Catfish John, and I was a folkie, and Alan had a folkie background too, and so turned out to be a country hit.
Right.
So I thought, well, I can do this. I can write for radio,
Was Perry Como the very first recording artist to record something that you wrote?
No, that would have been, I think, Randy and the Radiants. I've never even heard the record, but they recorded one. Bonnie's Part of Town. That was the first thing was ever recorded of mine.
Okay. But Perry Como was the biggest, like the first big artist.
First chart record, yes.
What did you think when that happened?
Oh, I was thrilled. The bigger thrill, Alan and Dickie recorded that song, Happy Man, which Perry Como recorded later, as the Jones Boys. They did a studio recording of it, and it was a much better record than the Perry Como record, but it was a local hit on the Jones Boys, Alan and Dickie. And I remember being in Houston where I'd go to the KPRC and record my songs in the studio with the radio. And we're driving back from the studio, and there are cute girls in the back seat, and John McMurray and I, my friend, were riding along, and that came on the radio. What a thrill that was. What a thrill. First time I'd ever heard one of my songs on the radio.
How did it feel?
How did it feel? Oh, I don't know. Felt good.
Yeah. Did you tell everybody around? Did you say, hey, that's my song?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Interesting. Would you say that throughout your songwriting journey, and my, what a journey it's been, has confidence been, have you always been confident about your abilities? Has there ever been times that you doubted yourself?
Oh, yes. But there was a period there of 10 or 15 years when I was in what's called the zone, or that they refer to as the zone, when I didn't doubt myself. But then toward the end, when I decided to retire, nothing was getting recorded. I didn't like what I was hearing on the radio. I didn't understand what I was hearing on the radio. So that was something, and I lost confidence, and something was telling me it's time to go home and give this up, which was probably overdue at the time.
Can you remember the last day that you worked as a songwriter? Your last time where you were writing songs?
I do not. I remember the day I packed up all my things at the office there in Universal and went home.
Yeah.
I sort of expected the employees to be lined up in front of the elevator begging me to stay, but there was nobody lined up in front of the elevator.
Yeah.
It didn't happen. I just walked out and with no fanfare whatsoever.
Yeah. Isn't that funny how that can work sometime?
Yes.
Yeah. And writing for you now, do you write? I know that there's the whole short stories and outdoor writing. Do you still pursue that?
No, I do not. I did that for about 10 years and don't do anything now except just play, garden, and tinker. And
you have a beautiful garden, by the way.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Would you say that, I mean, I was listening to a lot of these songs, which I knew very, very well. I know your music very, very well. And I was thinking, is there an enduring theme here? And I thought, well, you know, there's all different types of subjects here, but one enduring theme seems to be the South. Comes up again and again, the southern states.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about the Southland? This place that we're in right now?
I didn't understand it. We had a fourth grade teacher who was fond of Faulkner and read Faulkner to us in the fourth grade, but I was an English major in college, and when I got, all I'd ever had in high school was the New England poets and New England writers. It was as if Faulkner and Tennessee Williams and those people didn't exist. And then when I got to college, we started studying those people, and I had an epiphany that we have a great literature and a great literary tradition down here. So that was sort of an eye-opener. Then I had a great friend who taught history at South Carolina who was a great Southern scholar, and he and I spent a lot of time together fishing, and he introduced me to a lot of great writers, Robert Penn Warren, for example, had a huge influence on me. That's a book that a lot of good old boys like me came from, that idea.
Would you say that there is a song of yours that you think is your best work?
Well, there's some that you've never heard of that I think are. There's one that Roger Murrah and I wrote called Paradise, Stuck Out Here in Paradise, that John Anderson recorded, was not a hit. And there's one that I wrote alone, I'm Dancing as Fast as I Can, that Juice Newton recorded, that was not a hit. Those to me hold up even now. I can't find a line or a word in there that I would change. Also, Dad Seals and I wrote Everything That Glitters Is Not Gold for him, and it was a #1 record. I wouldn't change a word in that one either.
I like that Paradise song a lot. That's a good one.
Good, thank you.
Tell us about Don Williams. What kind of guy was he?
He was a very nice, gentle family man, and an old folkie. He had been a member of the Pozo Seco Singers, which had some minor hits, and when Alan Reynolds lured him into, always loved his voice, and lured him to. Alan Reynolds, by the way, is the fellow that later on discovered Garth Brooks and Crystal Gayle and everybody else you can think of.
Yeah.
But he lured Don to town. And Don and I worked together in the Jack Clements publishing company and got to be friends and wrote a few songs together and had a great relationship.
It seems like the three of you, Alan Reynolds and Dickie Lee, this was like this is a lifelong friendship.
We came to Nashville together. Yeah. Those two guys lured me to Memphis, and then Jack Clement made them an offer to come to Nashville. Didn't make me an offer, but I tagged along hoping for something, and so the three of us moved here together about 1970.
I spoke with Dickie Lee, and we were sitting on a leather couch just like this at his house, and he, so humble, he said, "Hey, if there had not been Bob McDill or Alan Reynolds, you wouldn't be sitting here. You wouldn't know who I was."
Wow.
What do you think of that? Too humble?
I don't know, too humble. Yeah. Dickie was a teenage heartthrob. By the time he was 20 years old, he was patches, and I saw Linda yesterday, and he was out on the road making money while the rest of us were trying to write songs and break into the business.
I was listening last night to Song of the South, and there's really no song that I can think of that is like that. What's amazing to me is how two people, more than two people have recorded it, but like the difference between the Bobby Bare version, where it's really sad, like you can feel the heartache in it, and then Alabama, I don't necessarily, because it's just a totally different vibe, I don't think about the heartache as much with the Alabama version. What did you think of the different interpretations of Song of the South?
Well, it was also, I think, Tom T. Hall recorded it, and some others. Each one of those is a little bit different interpretation, I guess. Bobby Bare just has a way of injecting that sad, mournful, 500 miles from home sort of thing into whatever he does. Thankfully, Alabama, there was a verse in there about winter was hot and winter was wet and summer was dry. Mama, she was old at 35, which is very dark. And they had sense enough to leave that out and make it a little more palatable for the public,
Were you trying to make a statement with Song of the South?
Well, it's a song about the Depression era South.
Right.
And I think I just read, not to get too studious on you, but I think I just read I'll Take My Stand, that book written by the Vanderbilt agrarians, who were all Vanderbilt fellows who were lamenting the loss, written in the 30s, lamenting the loss of the old agrarian rural South, beginning to industrialize. But they were all gentlemen. All those people who wrote, they were all gentlemen with soft hands. And the people in that song, those hardscrabble farmers, couldn't wait to get off those farms.
Right.
Daddy took a job with the TVA, that was a government, Tennessee Valley Authority, bought a washing machine and a Chevrolet. It was the best they'd ever had it. They were not at all sad to leave those little hardscrabble farms. Or tenant, as some of them were tenants, as tenant farmers. Didn't own anything.
I remember asking John D. Loudermilk, what makes a great song a great song? And he said, what makes a great song is when somebody records it.
Loudermilk should be in the Country Music Hall of Fame. I have no idea why he's not. He should be in there. Should have been there long before I've been in. I will be in there. But there's truth in that, of course.
How do you define a good song?
Well, I say it's hard to argue with success. I guess it would have to be most people would think, well, it needs to be a hit record, as Loudermilk's saying. Somebody records it. But I don't think every good song I've ever written has been is known. I don't think there are songs that no one's ever heard of mine that are good, that hold up even today. But they're just not commercial. They're just not ready, not commercial. But the public wouldn't enjoy them, I don't think.
But you think there's some truth in what Loudermilk says, in that, hey, you're also here to make a buck.
Absolutely right. Yes, there is. Yep, you've got to make a living. Thus, you look at songs in my catalog like "Baby's Got Her Blue Jeans On," etc.
Yeah.
It doesn't have anything to say. It's just a cute little ditty, but I think I did it very well.
Right.
All bragging aside. And Mel McDaniel did a fantastic job of it, too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You wrote all types of songs, from Amanda to Baby's Got Her Blue Jeans On. Would you say there was a certain style of song that was easier for you to write?
No. They're all hard. Blood, sweat, and tears. I like to say Amanda was the last gift I got. That came to me in about 30 seconds. After that, it was blood, sweat, and tears for 30 years.
When you were writing Amanda, what were you thinking? Did you have any idea that this was an exceptional song? Because it is.
Well, thanks. It was sort of an imitation of the band.
Yeah.
That great Canadian rock group. It was sort of an imitation of that, with the rural lyrics and it was kind of a funky rock and roll thing originally. And Don and Alan Reynolds made it into a country record. Thankfully.
What would you say was the biggest motivation? Because you had such a workman's mentality, 9 to 5. Hey, this is my job. I'm writing songs. What was motivating you to keep going and to keep working?
Oh boy, I had finally found something that I could do and do well, and I had finally found myself in a position with Colonel Bill Hall as my publisher that I was in the catbird seat, and I was not going to let anybody down. Myself, Bill Hall, the staff, they were all looking to me for another recordable song, and Bill was on me all the time, and I was happy to be in that position. Very happy. Because I'd been in situations before where the songs didn't get shown, didn't get plugged, didn't get sent to anyone. They just sat there, and so it was very refreshing to be in that position with Bill Hall.
You've received a lot of compliments through the years. Not only these kind of honors like the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame, now the Country Music Hall of Fame coming up here, but also, I'm sure, writer to writer, artists, even fans of music. You know, we were talking to our friend Howard here. He's been telling me the past couple of days about how, hey, some of these songs, that was my life, you know, good old boys like me. What's been the biggest compliment you've received?
Well, things like what Howard and I were just talking about how that meant so much to him growing up. I had a couple from Kentucky just contact me a month or so ago, and she said that song changed her life. She brought by all sorts of things for me to autograph and spent some time with us and had coffee, and that's quite a compliment.
Wow. What's going through your head when people tell you things like that? Or, you know, I was talking to somebody not long ago about some of these songs, and he was saying, I probably listened to that song 1,000 times. Wow.
What was the question?
What do you think when somebody says something like that? It changed my life.
Well, I immediately sort of disassociate myself with it, thinking that's the song. It's not me. That was a moment in my life when I wanted to say that particular thing and said it, and so there it is. It's a piece of art, and it's in my past, and I'm glad I did it. But you're not complimenting me; you're complimenting what I did back then.
I always like to end the interview just open-ended. You know, we just never know who's watching. We never know who's listening. What would you say to anybody out there who's joining us?
You probably mean young people who want to get in the music business?
People who are fans of music, anything.
Thank you all, fans. Thank all of you. Thank you very much. If you want to be in the music business, I'll tell you what the Colonel Bill Hall told all of us: work hard and save your money. That's the only thing you can. That thing works in every field and every pursuit in life. Work hard and save your money. And I don't know of anything other than that. Write what's what you know and what's important to you, and don't give up your art. I know a lot of people are afraid to try to say anything in a song, but you can. You don't need to be either a commercial hack, a sellout, or a great artist, someone who is only known in the coffee shops and the nightclubs. You can do both. You can write hits in the daytime, go home and write your art at night or whatever. I did that.
Yeah. You seem to be, this is my take on you anyways, you seem to be a testament to having a work ethic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If you find that you're good at something, you really need to do it. I was always puzzled by people who treated it as a hobby.
Yeah.
Who waited around for the muse to find them or tap them on the shoulder. And Alan Reynolds is a good, and Henry Mancini, you read about Henry Mancini. Where do you find inspiration, Henry? Every morning at 9 a.m. at the piano. If you're going to be a songwriter, heck, work at it. You know.
Has there been anything that has surprised you about your life?
Surprised me? Not really. I can't think of anything.
Interesting.
Getting old is a surprise. Yeah, that getting old is a surprise.
How is it a surprise?
Well, you just can't do as many things as you used to, and hunting, being out there when it's 5 degrees and a duck blind, that's kind of lost its romance for me.
Right.
And just being limited in a lot of different ways, that's a surprise. Never expected that to happen.
What would you say has been the best thing about having the experiences that you've had?
The best thing about having those experiences. Gosh. Well, I hope I've had a big life, a good life. I've sure tried to have a big life and a good life. Tried to be good to people, even though I know I've failed a lot. But I can't say that I held back like a wallflower and didn't make an attempt at everything.
Well, Bob McDill, thank you so much for having me in your home. You have written some songs that are eternal.
I hope so, Paul. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to meet you face
Yes,
to
sir.
face.
You too. Thank you.
An honor.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
You know, the Paul Leslie Hour is made possible by people like you, listeners, viewers. Please go to thepaulleslie.com/support, and you'll know what to do when you're there. Thank you. Thank you, everyone who contributes. Performance of The Entertainer intro song by John Primorano. And of course, this is your announcer speaking. See you next time on the Paul Leslie Hour.